Well, folks, we just got a 10-minute plus gameplay demonstration from the man himself, Aonuma, for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and I wanted to do a follow-up video to my reaction, which you can go check out, my live reaction to the gameplay. Do a follow-up video talking about the gameplay, specifically focusing on the 4 new abilities. Now, there's a lot in this 10-minute gameplay we have to really dive into. I mean, if you look around, you can see all kinds of things. I'll leave that to the analysis people, but today I just want to talk about the new abilities, the main focus of this 10-minute gameplay demonstration, because if you've been following my channel for a while, you know I've not been a Tears of the Kingdom doomer. I'm not one of those people. I've known the game was going to be good from the start, but I have been a little bit more critical of Nintendo not showing that much and not showing what's new. And I feel like I'm still kind of like, oh, we don't really know what we're doing in this game other than exploring. We don't know what dungeons look like. We don't know what the plot is really. So I'm a little disappointed from that aspect. But in terms of showing new gameplay stuff and explaining it to us, this gameplay did such a good job of getting me excited for this game. And the crazy thing is we're going to be playing it in like 6 weeks. So I want to go over all 4 of these new abilities and talk about them in the order that Aonuma showed them. So starting off, we have the new recall ability. Now, we've seen pretty much all these abilities in past trailers. We just didn't really have context. So the recall ability is what sends things kind of back in time, recalling it to a past point of its existence, I guess. We saw this, I think, in the first or second trailer that showed gameplay of like a spike ball rolling down a hill and Link sent it back up towards the enemy. This is how you get up to the islands. Around the islands, you'll have falling blocks. We've seen these in the other trailers. And this is really the only use case we've seen so far for it, those 2 things. I'm curious to see how much you'll actually be able to do with this, because from the looks of things, these 4 new abilities are replacing the stasis abilities, or not the stasis, the rune abilities, the Sheikah Slate abilities. So if it only does those 2 things, really, I'm curious to see what you can really do with this outside of getting up to the islands and sending things back towards an enemy that they throw at you or something like that. I'm sure like if a bokoblin throws something like a stick at you, you can use it on that. It might be kind of hard to aim it, but I'm curious to see what you'll actually be able to do with that in more like traditional gameplay, like combat scenarios. But either way, that one's really cool. The second thing that Aonuma showed us is one of the most insane things I've seen in a video game. Now, this isn't like a new concept per se. Other games have had weapon fusing, I believe, right? I can't think of any examples, but there's gotta be another game, right? But knowing that the freaking Breath of the Wild team is adding it, Breath of the Wild's game engine and like the physics and everything is unlike anything I've ever experienced in another video game. So for a game like this to come in here and be like, hey, we're adding weapon fusing, this does so much. So the first thing that we see is that weapon durability is back. But then Aonuma shows that you can basically repair weapons by fusing them to other things. So for the first example, he had a tree branch, the most basic thing you can pick up in Breath of the Wild and in Tears of the Kingdom. He has a tree branch which is about to break, and he just walks up a ledge and it fuses it to a boulder. It's not even another weapon that he has, it's a real-world object in the game. So not only can you fuse weapons together, it looks like you can basically fuse any interactable element together. We don't see too much of it, we don't get like too deep with it, but just knowing how insanely intricate Breath of the Wild systems were in that game, I can only imagine how deep people are going to be able to get with this new fuse mechanic in Tears of the Kingdom. So, I mean, even down to arrows, you can use it with your bow and arrow. If you are going to shoot an arrow, you can real quick pull up the menu and attach something else to your arrow. You can put like an ice choo-choo jelly kind of thing on it or whatever it was to freeze the enemy. You can put a Keese eyeball on it and it'll track the enemy in the midair. That's what we saw in the one trailer. You can put a quark leaf on it and it'll do a big gust of wind, I assume. There's so much potential here. And, me being critical of Nintendo for not showing much of the game, to their credit, not showing too much of this stuff, like, I do not want to see any more gameplay. I would like to see, like, maybe a tiny bit of story stuff, and, like, if there's dungeons, which I assume there is. But, to their credit, this is, like, perfect. I know enough to make me want to go into this game and spend probably actually hundreds of hours just messing around. That's the fun of Breath of the Wild, and I guess Nintendo knows that. That's why they aren't marketing it that much. because Nintendo knows that the discovery of Breath of the Wild, everyone kind of carving out their own path, doing these new things, learning together. You know, Twitter's going to be so much fun on May 12th. They made the right call at this one. Yeah, weapon fusing is a crazy mechanic. I didn't expect this. I don't think anybody, I haven't seen anybody mention this as a possibility for Tears of the Kingdom. But yeah, this was a very pleasant surprise. Also, real quick, talking about weapon durability, I'm actually glad that's back, but they kind of fixed it. They have weapon durability, but, you know, that's not really a thing anymore. It doesn't really matter now, because you can just go fuse it to something else. They also have another example, even your shield. You can put something on your shield, so he puts a smoke shroom, puff shroom on his shield. The enemy hits him while he blocks, and it just makes everything smoky, so the enemy loses sight of him, and he can sneak up and do a strike attack. So the possibilities for this mechanic here, genuinely, like, this is insane. Like, this is one of the most insane gameplay additions I've ever seen to a video game sequel, and it's going to add so much. You can put a log on a stick. You can do pretty much anything, and this goes into the next ability, which he showed, which is the Ultrahand, which is basically just magnesis, right? However, you use it in conjunction with Fuse, and you can create machines. So we saw this in the most recent trailer where Link made like a little car, and he can make literally a flying machine and a hot air balloon. Using the Ultra Hand, you can put items together. I don't really know how to explain it. You're seeing it on screen. It puts like this green goop in between it, and it connects them. It's not, I guess that's not really fusing them. It's just connecting them with the Ultra Hand ability. And then you can add an engine to it, or a fan, I guess, in this case. I'll be curious to see how much more we can do with this as well. You know, what can you do with Ultra Hand that isn't necessarily just traversal based? Because, you know, we've seen things in the sky, things in the water, things on land. You know, how much variation is there really going to be there other than raft, car, and flying thing? You know, I'll be curious to see I mean, that's up for us to figure out, right? It's not, I guess that's kind of Nintendo's thing here. They're just giving you the ability to do whatever you can think of, which is really cool. So I'm excited to see more about this. Also, quick note, because I think it was at the same time in the trailer, this was a bit sad for me. Actually, I guess it was a little bit later, but it doesn't really matter. We see Link diving from the very top of the game. Game looks freaking gorgeous, by the way. And he's diving down, and he lands in the water, and he does not go underneath the water. So I know a lot of people were hoping you'd be able to explore underneath the water in this game, like in past Zelda games, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to be the case. So a little disappointing there. But then we have the final ability, something we saw, I guess, once again in the first trailer that had gameplay, and that is the, what is it called? Ascend. It's called Ascend. So Ascend is the thing that lets Link literally just teleport up above whatever he's in. Now, I was curious what the actual, like, limitations of this would be. And Aonuma mentions there are going to be some restrictions, but for the most part, it seems like there aren't. There's no limitations. So the first demonstration he does is in, like, a little shrine thing. Not like a Zelda shrine, but you know what I mean. Little stone building. And it's like a thin ceiling, and he just does it through that. And that makes sense. But then the second example he gives, he goes into a cave that's part of this really tall mountain, and you can do it all the way up through that. So instead of climbing up a mountain now, which can take, you know, a little bit of time, you know, if it's raining and all that, you can just ascend up. This is another ability that I'm curious if it's really going to be like that. Like, okay, here's the thing. With Cryonis and Magnesis and Stasis, there was so much you could do with all of those abilities together. But I wonder with Tears of the Kingdom, what can you do with Ascend that could elevate the other abilities, you know, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm just not creative enough, or maybe there really probably won't be. But I'll be curious to see. I mean, either way, it's a really cool thing. It's very, like, it's technically impressive, right? I don't really know much about game development, but I can imagine coding that and creating that and making it not be a glitch-filled nightmare was probably a nightmare. You know, I can't really imagine how you would even go about doing that. So I'll be curious to see the actual limitations of it, and how much you can actually push that ability. But yeah, man, Tears of the Kingdom is looking really good. And that's not even talking about everything else in the trailer, which, I mean, I guess there's not that much to talk about. I probably won't do another video, but just like the world and how big it is. How good it's running for a Switch game and how good it looks for a Switch game is really impressive. They also announced that new Switch OLED and Pro controller, which I will be buying. We will be buying for full price in this case. So, yeah, I will say before I head off here, I think this is probably it. You know, I've seen more people saying, oh, there's going to be another trailer. I don't think so. I think they would have just done a direct if that was the case. This feels like, because we found out the game has gone gold now, this feels like the final thing. Maybe one trailer like a week before release, but I don't expect like a big marketing lead up to this game. I think they just want us to figure it out for ourselves, which is really cool. You know, I've been critical of it once again, but I gotta respect that. You don't really see that in the gaming industry. So, you know, shout out to Nintendo for that one. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of Tears of the Kingdom's new gameplay mechanics down in the comments below. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.